So if men really have all that power, how come they're the first to die? How come they are outlived by women by 7 whatever years? It's in flux. We don't know how it changes, but it's interesting. So these women that drug their men there, quote unquote, try to tell these guys, see, this is what you need to do. See, this guy's even a man's telling you, you need to be a beggar pussy. Well, I'm wearing the pants. Dr. Warren Farrell eventually looked a little deeper, and he realized, wait a minute, if men are the ones with all that white male privilege, then how come they're the first to go to war? How come it's always said women and children first on the Titanic? How come of the 20, 25, what he calls the death professions, this could be from soldier all the way to the garbage collector, construction worker. You know how many guys I know that are construction workers who've had like sheets of sheetrock fall on them, that fell off a roof, roofers? I can think of not one of those top 20, 25 death professions where men haven't gotten seriously injured or hurt or died. You don't see women doing that much. I'm not saying there aren't such women that do this, typically very masculine women, albeit. I know women firefighters, I know women cops. Great gals, first responders, soldiers, Marines, but typically not that much in the femininity. I would never force a woman to go to war. I would never force a woman to do this kind of job. I consider it our job. Warren Farrell then, he said, look, in the post office, you don't have in Germany there was a draft. We abolished this approximately 1973 or so after the Vietnam War. We don't have a draft. We have a professional army of professional soldiers. Anyone who's in the military right now is there voluntarily, more or less. But the Selective Service, which is the office where you still, every male, I used to be registered in the Selective Services, now I'm a little too old for that, but while I was in your age, 20s, 30s, I had to register for the Selective Services. That means if the shit hit the fan, we would have been shipped out. I was in the Army Reserve. Luckily I got out of it, went private military, but if I wouldn't have, I would have been in Iraq War I. And I know dozens of my buddies who either didn't come back from that, a couple didn't come back. The rest, half of them were psychologically very damaged or had some, to this day, not totally clarified problem of what's known as Gulf War syndrome. So if men have all this privilege, then how come they're the first to die? How come today, Warren Farrell looked at statistics. He said about 100 years ago, 70 years ago, before the war, women and men lived roughly equally long. Black men and black women lived roughly as long as white men and white women. This has dramatically changed. Now the average woman, I'm not too sure in the actual statistics, I haven't looked them up recently, but if I remember correctly, the average woman, white woman, lives about 70 years longer than a white man. And as a black man, your life expectancy is even lower. I think it's 66 versus 71 for white men. I think it's 79 for white women. And black women live longer than black men. So if you look at who has the power in society, I think we can all agree on that blacks have probably a little less power in this country, unfortunately. Not because I think this is a good thing, quite the opposite. It's actually a very bad thing, but it shows you who has the power. And it ain't black people, and it ain't men. By the way, blacks are embracing Donald J. Trump quite a bit. If he's such a racist, if his masculinity is so toxic, how come we have the lowest unemployment rate, not just for anyone in about 50 years, maybe ever, but particularly for blacks, Hispanics, minorities? He's helped them more than even white people. Okay, so how racist is Trump really? You be the judge of that. Donald Trump has helped about 5 million people just in the first 3 years of administration to break out of poverty. No other president has ever done this, ever. Ever. This is not about politics. This is about facts, truth. Laws, universal laws. So if men really have all that power, how come they're the first to die? How come they're outlived by women by 7 whatever years? It's in flux. We don't know how it changes, but it's interesting. If I have more power, shouldn't I be living longer? Shouldn't I be more healthy? Strong people are never the problem. It's always weak people. When you have weakness, that's a power vacuum. No, that kind of power vacuum will always be filled by tyrants.